In the last episode, we ended with a promise, a book published in Brazil in 1944, describing a civilization of millions of inhabitants, organized, governed, fully alive, that exists nowhere any telescope has ever pointed, and nowhere any spacecraft has ever reached. Tonight, we go inside it. Because while the world debates whether intelligent life exists on distant planets, a Brazilian doctor describes something far stranger. A civilization that is not light years away. A civilization that, according to him, is here. Right above us. Right beside us. Separated from our world, not by distance, but by something our senses were never built to perceive. His account is so detailed, so internally consistent, so structured, that even the most hardened skeptic has to pause at the same question. How did a man with no scientific training, in a small town in Brazil, in the middle of the 1940s, describe a complete society, its government, its institutions, its economy, its architecture, with the precision of a returning explorer? This is the story of Nosso Lar, and of the man who claimed he had been there.
The Dr. W.H.O. died. The book opens with a death. A man named André Luiz, a physician who had lived and worked in Rio de Janeiro, dies. And then, to his absolute horror, he does not stop existing. He wakes up, but not in any heaven he had been promised. Not in any hell he had feared. He finds himself in a gray, fog-bound region of suffering and confusion that he calls the Umbral, a zone inhabited by beings who, like him, died still chained to their regrets, their attachments, their unfinished business. For what feels like an eternity, he wanders there, lost, calling out, unanswered. And then, when he has nearly given up, he is found. A spirit named Clarêncio, calm, luminous, unmistakably more advanced than anything around him, lifts him out of the darkness and carries him upward to a city. A real city with streets and buildings and gardens and light. A city of millions of souls who, like him, had once lived on Earth. A city built and maintained not by the dead, but by the living. Because, as André Luiz slowly comes to understand, no one in this place is dead at all. They call it Nosso Lar. In Portuguese, it means our home. And here is the detail that matters most. André Luiz did not write this book. He had been dead for decades when it was published. The book was received word by word, page by page, through a young Brazilian medium named Francisco Cândido Xavier, a man of almost no formal education, a man who would go on to transcribe more than 400 books in his lifetime, give away every cent of the royalties, and die in voluntary poverty in 2002. He always insisted he was not the author. He was, he said, only the hand. The author was a doctor who had died long before, and who wanted to tell the living what he had found on the other side. Inside to Cologne, what André Luiz describes, once he enters Nosso Lar, is not vague. It is not poetic. It is not the soft, cloudy afterlife of religious imagination. It is an administration. The colony has a government, led by a governor. Beneath him operate 6 ministries, each with a specific function. The Ministry of Regeneration, which receives the newly arrived and helps them recover. The Ministry of Assistance. The Ministry of Communication. The Ministry of Elucidation. The Ministry of Divine Union. And the Ministry of Help, which sends workers down to Earth to assist the living. There are hospitals, because the newly arrived often carry the wounds of their deaths, not in their bodies, but in their minds, and those wounds must heal. There are schools, because existence in Nosso Lar is not a reward. It is a stage of education. There are vast fields where food is grown, water that is collected and purified, an economy based not on money but on what André Luiz calls our bonuses, credits earned through honest work and service to others. There are families, reunions, friendships that survive death, and there is also longing souls who watch the relatives they left behind on Earth, who feel their grief, who wait. Read that again. A government, ministries, hospitals, schools, an economy, an infrastructure supporting millions, described in a book published in 1944. In a country where most people had never heard the phrase flying saucer, because that phrase would not enter the English language until 3 years later, in 1947. And here is what should stop you cold. André Luiz describes beings within this colony who did not originate on Earth at all. Visitors, helpers, spirits from worlds more advanced than ours, who came to assist in the long, slow education of humanity. Beings from other worlds, living in a city we cannot see, working quietly on the development of our own. The dimension we cannot see. For most of the 20th century, a claim like this could be dismissed with a single word: fantasy. There was no scientific framework in which an entire civilization could exist right beside our own, undetectable, occupying the same space we occupy. The idea was, by definition, unscientific. That is no longer true. Modern physics now takes seriously something that would have sounded like madness in 1944. The possibility that reality has more dimensions than the ones we experience. String theory, in its most developed forms, requires not 4 dimensions, but 10 or 11. Most of them, the theory proposes, are hidden from us, curled up, folded away, or simply operating on scales and frequencies our senses and instruments cannot access. We already know our perception is almost laughably limited. The human eye detects less than 1/10,000,000th of the electromagnetic spectrum. We do not see radio waves passing through our bodies right now. We do not see the infrared, the ultraviolet, the gamma radiation crossing the room. An entire universe of information surrounds us at every moment, and we are blind to nearly all of it. So the question stops being absurd and becomes precise. If reality has layers we cannot perceive, could something be living in them? This is not a fringe idea anymore. In ufology, one of the most respected figures of the last 50 years, the computer scientist Jacques Vallée, the man who inspired the French researcher in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, abandoned the simple alien hypothesis decades ago. He argued that the phenomenon behaves less like visitors from another planet and more like intelligences from an adjacent reality, interdimensional, coexisting with us, stepping into our perception and then stepping back out. The Pentagon's own recent reports describe objects that move between mediums, through air, through water, through space, as if the physical barriers that constrain us do not constrain them at all. André Luiz described exactly this in 1944. A civilization occupying the same space as ours, operating on a level of reality our bodies cannot detect, whose inhabitants can perceive us, while we cannot perceive them. He did not call it another dimension. He did not have the vocabulary. He called it the spirit world. But the structure he described, and the structure modern physics is now reluctantly drawing on its whiteboards, are beginning to look like the same thing. For 70 years, the search for non-human intelligence has been built on a single assumption: that if they exist, they are far away, on other planets, across impossible distances. And that contact, if it ever comes, will arrive in metal craft crossing the void. Nosso Lar suggests the assumption may be backwards. What if the most significant non-human intelligence is not light years away, but inches away, on a layer of reality we have not learned to see? What if the reason the Fermi paradox echoes with silence is that we have been scanning the wrong direction entirely, pointing our antennas outward into deep space when the civilizations are not out there, but here, woven into the same fabric of existence we occupy every day? This is the framework Spiritism has held for over a century. That consciousness is not produced by the brain, but housed by it temporarily. That when the body dies, consciousness continues, not somewhere far away, but in conditions of existence layered around and through our own. That the universe is not a vast empty space with a few rare islands of life, but a densely inhabited reality, most of which is simply invisible to beings at our stage of development. And that some of those beings, occasionally, are seen as lights in the sky, as figures at the edge of sleep, as presences that vanish the moment we try to fix them in our gaze. André Luiz was not speculating about any of this. He was, by his own account, reporting, describing the place he now lived to the world he had left behind. A doctor, writing through the hand of a medium, describing a city of millions that no instrument on Earth has ever found. And yet, described in such detail, with such internal logic, that more than 80 years later, the most advanced physics and the most serious ufology are slowly arriving at the same strange door he opened in 1944. The book Nosso Lar has never gone out of print. It has been translated into more than a dozen languages, including English, where it is published as Nosso Lar, Life in the Spirit World, and also under the title Astral City. In 2010, it was adapted into one of the most expensive films in Brazilian history, seen by millions. And still, in the English-speaking world, almost no one knows it exists. A complete account of a non-terrestrial civilization, its government, its hospitals, its schools, its economy, its visitors from other worlds. Written down in 1944 by a man with no education who claimed only to be the hand that held the pen. You can dismiss it. Many do. But before you do, sit with the question that has no easy answer. How did this account come to exist, this detailed, this organized, this consistent, in that place, in that time, from that man? Maybe it was imagination. Or maybe a doctor who died in Rio de Janeiro really did wake up somewhere else and really did find a way to tell us what he saw. If this episode opened a door you did not expect, leave one word in the comments. Just one word. That is enough. Subscribe. Because the map is still unfolding, and the next piece is the strangest one yet. Because if civilizations can exist in dimensions beside our own, the next question is obvious. What about the planets we can see? The ones right here, in our own solar system. In 1955, another Brazilian medium answered that question. He named a planet. He described its inhabitants. He described their craft. The planet was Mars, and what he wrote has never been translated into English until now. Next episode, Mars was inhabited.